You're listening to Three Things to Know with Stephanie Haney. The people you want to hear from and the things you need to know in Northeast Ohio and beyond. Get in the know, stay in the know. Starting right now.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Three Things to Know podcast. I'm Stephanie Haney. This is part 2 of a 2-part podcast where we're exploring what the impact will be of a Joe Biden presidency here in Ohio. In part 1, I got the Democratic perspective from Senator Sherrod Brown. This is part 2, where we will look into the Republican perspective with Republican advisor Mehek Cooke. Now, this is a time where we are seeing deep division and varying points of view on just what that will mean here in Ohio. To give you an example of that, look at all the votes that objected to certifying the result of the Electoral College from our representatives here in Ohio. On the Republican side, 3 Republicans supported the lawful result that Joe Biden won the Electoral College votes. That includes Senator Rob Portman, Representative Anthony Gonzalez, and Representative David Joyce. However, 3 Republicans that represent us here in Northeast Ohio objected to the Electoral College certifying of that vote. That includes Representatives Bill Johnson, Jim Jordan, and Bob Gibbs. That's just here in Northeast Ohio. Elsewhere in Ohio, there were 2 more Republican representatives in the Capitol that objected to certifying the Electoral College vote. Those were Representatives Steve Shabbat and Warren Davidson. Now let's take a look at the vote on impeaching President Donald Trump. 10 Republicans joined in with the Democrats, something we did not see the first time that happened. And one of those people, Representative for Ohio Anthony Gonzalez. Every other Republican U.S. member of Congress for Ohio voted against impeaching President Trump. But regardless of all of this, Joe Biden takes office on January 20th, and people are wondering, what will that actually mean for Ohio, which, according to the results of the 2020 election, is a red state right now. So for the conservative outlook, I talked with Republican strategist Mehek Cooke, who I mentioned at the end of the first part of this podcast, served as a legal advisor for former Republican Ohio Governor John Kasich when he ran against Donald Trump for the Republican nomination in 2016. Now, when I talked with Mehek, the House was just in the process of debating the impeachment of President Trump exactly 1 week following the deadly riots in Washington, D.C. So since then, I got her statement on Republicans, including Representative Gonzalez, joining in that vote to impeach Trump. Here's what she said. With all due respect, Americans have had enough. Impeachment is a deeply serious matter and shouldn't be used as a political weapon. It's a waste of time to impeach a president who will be leaving office in a few days, especially because the Senate doesn't have time to take up a trial. There are too many Americans, too many Ohioans, out of work, out of money, and out of patience because of Congress's inability to quickly provide ample COVID-19 relief. Congress should stay laser focused on ramping up vaccine distribution and supporting job creation and economic recovery. America truly needs to see calm, unifying leadership from their members of Congress. Let's focus on what matters most, coming together to give back health, hope, and opportunity for each individual so they can believe in and live the American dream. That's Mehek's comment on the Republicans joining in the vote to impeach President Donald Trump, which did happen. And now it will move forward to a Senate and the trial. And with that, here's my conversation on what impact a Joe Biden presidency will have here in Ohio with Mehek. Mehek, thank you so much for joining me on the Three Things to Know podcast today.
It's great to be with you, Stephanie. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we are meeting under not the greatest of circumstances as we are 1 week out from the riots that took place in Washington, D.C. at the time that we're talking about this, and we continue to learn more and more about the situation that unfolded. Unfortunately, 4 rioters died, at least 56 officers injured. 1 officer, unfortunately, lost his life. And there were Ohioans that were involved in those demonstrations turned riots in Washington, D.C. Here in Ohio, a state that voted for Donald Trump. So how do you think, from the Republican perspective, that a Joe Biden presidency will impact the mood here in Ohio?
Well, let me first off just start by saying that the riots were disgraceful and absolutely un-American. But we can't attempt to blame all conservatives or Trump voters for the actions of those that the Republican Party has overtly condemned. And I think it's becoming very politically motivated. And when I look at Ohio and the mood, First and foremost, I think about our U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Ohio, Dave DeVillers. It really doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, independent. You will be held accountable and prosecuted if you committed crimes at the U.S. Capitol and you're an Ohioan. And I look at the mood overall in Ohio as well. I think Biden is really starting from behind. He did not win the state, despite the amount of money that he spent here. Trump still held an overwhelming majority, and he won by the same margin he did 4 years ago, almost 8 points. So I think Biden's going to have to prove that he can lead during a time of national crisis. And to be honest, I mean, he's had 5 decades to prepare for this. So in Ohio, I can say the mood is we're bracing ourselves. You don't swap horses midstream. And we're doing that. We're changing an administration, we're changing leaders, and Biden's going to have to get to work from day one for Ohioans to trust him.
We do still have a few days here before Joe Biden is inaugurated as the president on January 20th. So let's talk about the current leadership just for a moment. President Donald Trump has come out and said that the comments that he made before those events turned so incredibly violent and dangerous were, quote, totally appropriate, and that the specter of the House voting to impeach him for a second time is causing tremendous anger and potentially stoking more violence. How do you feel about how President Donald Trump has reacted to the D.C. riots so far?
Well, I'll start by telling you that we all have free will. The president did not tell people to storm the Capitol and desecrate it. He could have stepped up sooner. And I think that the 7 days that we have until the inauguration of President-elect Biden will be very telling. But we have to stop the blame game. I think that the Republican Party is a party of accountability. It is our job to step up. Even if we disagree, there is a way to lead, and we're not at war with one another. And I honestly think it's happening on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. We are waging war and turning Americans against each other, and that is not the way forward. And you brought up impeachment, Stephanie. It's not going to bring Americans together. We need unity, civility. Impeachment will not be a solution. In fact, what I see happening if the president is impeached is this proceeding is going to go on for months and months. And the American people do not want to sit through another impeachment hearing. And I think that it's going to be more politically motivated, and it's going to be used as a weapon against all Republicans. If we really want change, if we really want unity, it's time to get back to work. Enough is enough. We have so many small businesses that have shut down. I think in 2020, a third of our small businesses have struggled. We need to get Ohioans and nationally Americans healthy and roll out this vaccine so we can get to a healthy and stable place.
Now, assuming, of course, we're having this conversation a week before the inauguration and the impeachment vote is supposed to happen today, all signs do point to the fact that the House will impeach President Donald Trump. By the time this comes out, that probably will have happened. You talk about the fact that it might take months to move through a trial in the Senate, but it also might not. What do you make of the fact that there are reports that Senator Mitch McConnell has said that he actually supports the House's efforts to bring forth an impeachment, and he does think that Trump committed impeachable offenses?
I think everything's on the table. I've said this in the past. I think that Congress has an opportunity to look to see if the president committed acts that are impeachable. But it still comes down to something very simple. We are divided not only as a country, but even in Congress, Republicans against Republicans, Republicans against Democrats. And as we are still in a state of crisis and a pandemic, I have no confidence that Congress would be able to fully go through an impeachment hearing and put this to rest. I think they need to do their jobs. They need to look at pandemic relief. I think we need to help the Ohioans that are hurting, and we need to ensure that vaccine distribution is going in a way that allows Americans to reopen the economy and get back to work.
Do you think it's possible for a President Joe Biden to do what he said he wants to do, which is to see sort of a bifurcated process happening in the Senate where there's a trial moving forward and also moving forward on confirming his cabinet nominations and also that stimulus relief?
No, I do not think that both are possible. I think we have to keep our eye on the ball. It's getting Americans back to work. I think that impeachment is, while there are a lot of individuals that may support it, it is a waste of time. It is not helping to heal or unite our country. And at the end of the day, I think that to move in a direction that is going to ensure that we have some sort of stability, we need to focus on top priorities. We've already been through one impeachment hearing with President Trump, and that was, I would say, about half of his time serving as president. It doesn't do us any good to continue to focus on this. It's how do we move forward instead of the blame game.
One more question about the impeachment, just because this is such a hot topic right now. If it does move forward to a conviction, do you see a possibility when we talk about sure what impact this will have on healing for the nation, but if that's not the goal, what if the goal is to get to a point where the Senate could actually bar President Trump from future office and do other things like strip him of his pension? Do you see something like that being possible in the Senate?
I think all options are on the table, and this is definitely extremely disappointing. I think that President Trump spent 4 years trying to prove naysayers wrong, and in one day, he proved a lot of people right. I think the next 7 days will really be instrumental in terms of making sure we have a peaceful transition. But at the end of the day, yes, you can take an action against the president. They've talked about censuring him as well. There are a lot of options that you can do to set a precedent. But if we don't focus on reopening our economy and vaccine distribution, which in my opinion is the number one priority to get Americans back to work and ensuring that we have a healthy and stable society, I think this is going to be all for nothing. All the progress we have made, and some of it very good the last 4 years, is going to be destroyed if we continue to lead politically motivated charges.
Let's look forward now to what the Biden presidency will mean here in Ohio. And you bring up the vaccine distribution. President Trump has said that he believes that's the responsibility of the states once the vaccines land in the states. How do you foresee a Biden administration handling that?
Well, I hope that the Biden administration looks at this as an opportunity. I agree that a one size fits all will never work. So we do not want government mandated plans. I think that having some type of guidance and metrics in terms of how to go about distribution is extremely important. It's something that the Trump administration has already started and beginning to give guidance to so many states. The number one thing, though, is allow states to figure out distribution and lean on the federal government when we need it the most. But it's really hard to predict how the Biden administration is going to be different in terms of vaccine distribution. But there's an absolute opportunity to ensure that there is more exchange of data, more exchange of solutions, and forward thinking rather than spending the next 100 days pointing fingers and saying what the Trump administration did not do. We have an opportunity to move forward and say, here are some solutions, or here's some things that may work that have worked already in several states.
One thing that Joe Biden has mentioned is potentially a possibility of not holding back for that second dose before getting those first doses out there. That's not necessarily been recommended by the FDA at this time. Definitely a possibility. We'll see what happens there. Something else that Joe Biden has been vocal about is promising a third stimulus package. We did already see a $1,200 check for most Americans, a $600 check for most Americans. President Trump supported a $2,000 check for most Americans. However, the Republicans not on board with that. But now we're in a situation where the Democrats will effectively control the Senate with that tie-breaking vote from Vice President Kamala Harris and the House and the White House. So what do you foresee from a Biden administration in terms of stimulus relief here in Ohio?
I think that the Biden administration will absolutely pass another package to allow for relief. And I know particularly in Ohio, there are so many individuals that are hurting, that have been out of work, and we really should be providing some sort of help. But government cannot subsidize companies, individuals, and homes forever. And that's why it's key that we have some sort of thoughtful rollout and continued pressure on vaccine distribution. And I will say that when we talk about stimulus dollars, there's an opportunity to really ensure that money gets in the hands of those that need it the most. Checks going to every single individual is only going to increase our national debt. We can be thoughtful and make sure that individuals that are out of housing today, out of jobs, unable to support their families and their children, those are the individuals that we're helping. But with the caveat that vaccine distribution and making sure that we have every single individual eligible to receive the vaccine can get it as soon as possible is going to be number one, because this money will dry out.
Do you foresee single payments from a Biden administration, or do you think he'll push for recurring payments to individuals? I know you said you don't think that's a good idea, but any idea what you predict from a Biden administration here in Ohio?
I think he'll probably push for reoccurring. I don't think it's a good idea. I hope that his advisors can talk about what that subset of people look like that actually need the help, and then focus on how do we get these people not only help today, but an opportunity for a job and what reopening the economy looks like. But it's really difficult to tell until the administration gets in there. But from everything that I am seeing and reading, they're going to be pushing for reoccurring payments. And I think that is a very slippery slope that creates dependency on the federal government. And we're better off creating opportunities and figuring out how to get out of this by coming together as a community.
Speaking of the economy, that's something that's a very important issue for Ohio voters. It was actually ranked number 2, only behind COVID-19, as an issue for Ohioans in the Your Voice Ohio Bliss Institute poll over the summer. Now, during the Trump administration, despite the ups and downs of COVID-19 shutting down jobs, so it definitely went up and down and moved around a lot, particularly in this last year. But when Trump began office in January 2017, unemployment was at 5.2% in Ohio. It's up a half a percentage point now. It's at 5.7% in Ohio based on the latest data we have available from Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services. Do you think we'll see any difference here from President Trump's 4 years in office to Biden taking office when it comes to unemployment in Ohio?
Well, it's interesting. The economy was extremely strong under President Trump pre-pandemic. We had the median household incomes that were growing, and poverty rates amongst Black Americans fell below 20% for the first time post-World War II. So I think we had record rates, record numbers. What's going to be interesting is as we reopen the economy, what that growth looks like. It's hard to predict today job numbers, but I do know one thing. Under President Trump right now, as we have started reopening the economy, we are starting to see a growth again in terms of our unemployment decreasing, more individuals employed. So I think that, again, vaccine distribution and the execution of that under President-elect Biden, we will continue to pivot back to what I believe to be a healthy and strong economy.
Let's talk about another thing that experts believe would be a boon to the economy: student loan forgiveness. Not necessarily something that Republicans have typically been on board with, but current Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, presumptive Majority Leader Schumer, has said Biden could forgive up to $50,000 of student loans per person with an executive order. That was before knowing that the Democrats would have control of the Senate. What do you think will happen there?
Look, I think this is a terrible idea. We are continuing to increase our national debt. And let me tell you, I do believe that America is a land of opportunity, but money does not grow on trees. We are pushing for an entitled society, and I'm all for education reform, but a handout is not the solution. We need to ration our dollars to ensure that we are helping to rebuild and reopen the economy. The other thing about student loans is there's no mistake. Every individual that signs up for a loan with knowledge knew they had to pay it back. So I am not for these handouts. And I think that this is a terrible idea. It's not going to help us regain trust, reopen the economy. And there's going to be a lot of battle. And it really should be on how to decrease our tuition, how to talk about career technical schools, not wiping debt away 100%.
So fair to say then you think that level of student loan forgiveness would have a negative impact here in Ohio?
Absolutely. It's not the way to fight for the American dream. I We don't believe in handouts here. We work hard, and we want to ensure that we are not setting up a system for entitlement for our future generations.
Let's talk about an issue that has seemed to maybe fall a little bit by the wayside because the COVID-19 pandemic has been at the forefront of everyone's minds, the opioid epidemic and addiction. And that's something that has hit Ohio very hard. What we're seeing from projections is that Ohio is on track to break the all-time annual record of over 4,800 opioid-related deaths that was set in 2017. Now, President Donald Trump did bring national attention to this when he declared this a national emergency in the first year of his presidency. What do you see a Biden presidency impacting in regards to that here in Ohio?
There is so much room for improvement, Stephanie. The Trump administration announced in the beginning a $1.8 billion funding mechanism to states so that we could continue to expand access and care for individuals that were battling this. And I think if President-elect Biden continues to support prevention, treatment, recovery, there are ways that we can meet each state's needs and continue to make improvements. But I think Ohio in particular needs to continue to prioritize our combating this problem through public safety officers, healthcare advocate and officials, and ensuring that we continue to even look at sentencing reform so that an individual who is struggling, who has a very low level offense for an opiate, isn't immediately thrown into jail. We've got to look at reforms. We've got to look at treatment and prevention. And I know in Ohio we had Senate Bill 3 that was really working to help some of these individuals, instead of incarcerating them, putting them in a treatment facility. And I really hope that our legislature here looks at that again. But the president and then President-elect Biden can continue to help with solutions through funding and through putting metrics on that and ensuring we have accountability and prevention as states are receiving funding. But I think the number one issue in Ohio is constantly coming together at a grassroots level and ensuring that we're working on prevention rather than incarceration.
When you talk about a shift away from incarceration, let's talk about a different drug. Let's talk about the legalization of marijuana for a moment. Now, this is something that we already have to a certain degree here in Ohio. We have medical cannabis legalized. We've got the decriminalization of marijuana for low-level possession in a lot of areas in Ohio. That's something that Biden has said he's on board with. He hasn't really gone as far to say that he's on board with legalizing recreational marijuana use. Do you think that we see a moment where that becomes more likely here in Ohio under a Biden presidency?
I mean, maybe Ohio really threaded the needle very thoughtfully and ensured legalization of medical marijuana with the regulations that are set forth and under a doctor's supervision. And I think there are states that have already started heading towards recreational use. But I do think that we need to allow states to make that decision and allow that we have not only thought leaders, but under a doctor's supervision and really think holistically about this. But I've never been for a one size fits all. I think that allowing for states to decide this is going to be the best course of action as we continue to see what legalization does in other states. And there could be tied to so many studies, and we have so much to learn. I really think Ohio has done a good job in terms of really being careful and just allowing it at this point for medical use.
Let's talk about the state of the Republican Party just quickly here in Ohio. At one point, Ohio was considered a crucial swing state that really could go either way. Now we're at a point in history where we're seeing southern states turn more blue and Ohio arguably turning more red. But there does seem to be a growing division within the Republican Party, both in Ohio and nationally, between the people who remain loyal to President Trump and those who maybe want to distance themselves. How do you feel about the state of the Republican Party here in Ohio right now?
Well, I can tell you big picture, the Republican Party is strong. The president won by an overwhelming margin. We had in our state house, the Senate had the highest supermajority. We picked up 4 seats in the Ohio House. All 12 members of Congress were elected. The Ohio Democratic chairman resigned, and all of this occurred under the thoughtful leadership of our Ohio Republican Party Chairman, Jane Timken. So I think overall Republicans are doing extremely well in Ohio, but there's always room for improvement. I think we have to stop thinking about a divide in the Republican Party. It does not have to be Trump Republicans versus other Republicans, and we need to stop bifurcating and come together and think about what the path is forward to rebuild, because Trump did unite a base of the working class, many immigrants, and he had about 75 million Americans that voted for him. That is an important statistic. That's an important number. Those are important people that shouldn't be forgotten. So the Republican Party really has an opportunity to ensure that nobody is left behind, that we continue to fight for freedom of speech, limited government, and unity.
One more question for you before I let you go today, Mehek. Are there any big question marks in your mind when it comes to the impact a Biden presidency will have here in Ohio?
Well, it's going to be interesting how Joe Biden works with Ohio, because we are Republican controlled. And when he first started running for office, he talked about unity, civility, bipartisanship. During the Georgia races, he made several comments that he was going to be the most progressive president. That is not what Americans need right now. We want a solid foundation where we can protect the safety of our families, our communities, ensure that we can get back to work and reopen Ohio. So it'll be very interesting. I hope he stays aligned with building and creating partnerships and unity, and does not allow the extreme left to hijack what I consider an opportunity for us to grow and heal.
It will definitely be an interesting 2 years, 4 years, and whatever comes after that. Mehek, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you bringing the Republican perspective.
Absolutely. Great to be with you.
Now, since Mehek and I spoke, we now know that Joe Biden's third promised round of COVID relief includes $15 billion in grants to help small businesses get back on their feet. That includes the restaurant and the bar industry, of course. Now, we'll have to see what happens with that. Again, the House leader, Nancy Pelosi, and the Senate soon-to-be Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, have said they will work quickly to pass this. Of course, they do also have the issue of the impeachment trial to contend with now. And it has been Joe Biden's hope, he said, that they would be able to move forward, maybe do a split session, work on the trial, and also the other matters of, confirming his cabinet nominations and COVID-19 aid and so on and so forth. But we do know that that is part of what Joe Biden is proposing in his plan. Now, in that spirit, what you need to know in NEO this week is all about supporting local business. And for that, I'm joined by 3 News reporter Brandon Simmons. Brandon, thanks for joining me on the 3 Things to Know podcast.
Yeah, no problem, Stephanie. Always glad to be here and help you out.
And you have a particular tie to the local food industry, I understand.
Yeah, I do. You know what? My father-in-law he's a restaurant owner. He owns Frederick's Wine and Dine. It's in Warrensville Heights. And he's been open for over 10 years now. And that's really a milestone for many restaurant owners. I know that you always hear this notion that, if you can't survive really those first few years, you probably won't survive. So they kind of try to make it to that threshold so that they know they'll be around long term. And it looks like he's doing very well for himself. So we're really glad about that. A lot of people in the family, of course, are proud about what he's been able to accomplish.
Well, we love to hear that. I've worked in the restaurant industry for a long time. I'm very familiar with that phrase. You're kind of losing money for the first 5 years, they say. So love to hear that he's doing well, still around. Love the wine aspect of it. You and I are going to talk more about that later for sure. But we're here to talk about something else today. You're going to tell us where to get the best pancakes in town, I understand.
Oh my goodness, man. You're kind of putting me on the spot, but we talked about this. So one of my favorite places when it comes to, first off, as we talked about, with my father being a local business owner, I like to support the local places where you're not going to just go find one in any other city. So if you ask me, that place here is the original Pancake House in Woodmere. I think their website is actually originalpancakehousecleveland.com, because obviously they serve everybody around here, but it's in Woodmere. It's right across from the Eaton Plaza where the Apple store and that stuff is on the east side. So if you're familiar with that, look right across the street and you'll see the original Pancake House. Now, I think for people who live on the east side, it's probably not a secret. And now they do have a west side location, I believe, in Fairview Park. So that's really cool too. So west siders, check it out too. But this is a place I've been going to since I was younger. I remember we didn't go often, but when we would go, I was always like, hey, what's that pancake place that we went to? Can we go back there again? So it's locally family owned, and the pancakes are amazing. The pancakes, the bacon, omelets to die for. I mean, let me tell you, it's just an all around good menu, great hospitality. And they have those hours you would expect out of a place like that too. They're only open from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. So you got to get in early and get that breakfast in. And it's just really an awesome spot if you're looking for somewhere new that you haven't tried. Not Bob Evans, not IHOP, not the usual places, but this is a great local place to check out for sure.
Tell me if you agree with this, Brandon. There is something about breakfast specifically. It's nice to have dinner made for you. It's nice to pick up lunch, but breakfast, when someone else makes it for you, is just so much better.
Well, yeah, what it is, I'm an early riser too, so like dinner, I feel like you're going to eat dinner because you've been up all day, right? You're going to get to it. But as an early riser, I'm like, man, I really want something that's going to brighten my day. What's that going to be? And for me, it's good food. Like I always joke with people, I try to get my workouts in the morning, but I really work out just to be able to eat what I want. So like Pancake House is that kind of place where like I love to order. They have a meat lover's omelet. And I know everybody's not into that, but if you are, I mean, it's like every choice of meat, it's like 6 eggs. Then you get the pancakes that comes with it, and put it together with like a hot cocoa with whipped cream or something. And I'm telling you, you're having a great day. So
you are speaking to me because one of my favorite things for the breakfast out to eat scenario is hot chocolate, extra whipped cream on the side. I'm really just using the hot chocolate to dip the whipped cream in, honestly, at that point.
That's really all it's for. And if they have good whipped cream, like it's got to be good whipped cream. And I'm telling you, you're in good shape. And I'm ordering extra with you. I understand that totally.
That is right. All right. So the original Pancake House in Woodmere. Now, you said you went there as a child. So that's how you found out about it?
Yeah, that's how I found out about it. I mean, my parents, we always went to local spots. I mean, they were big on that too. I remember we used to go to, I think it's called the Coffee Cup in Maple Heights. It's Chris's restaurant in Maple Heights. I grew up in Maple Heights, so I know a lot of the places around there too. But anything kind of near southeast side of Cuyahoga County, I'm sort of familiar with. So we tried to frequent all of those different places, and that was kind of my dad's thing. I mean, he would drive around town often and just he'd like to just show us the land, really. He had a story for like every location where he's like, hey, so back over here, we used to do this or that. But really, it was the food spots is what I loved so much. So anytime I found some good eating with dad and with mom, with the whole family, it was a good time. And obviously the good food is just a bonus. So Original Pancake House, that's a place that's going to get you that for sure.
Those memories around food are definitely such staples of so many of our childhoods. We want to keep those around. We want to support local. This was a great recommendation, great need to know in NEO, especially if you're not super familiar with the East Side, which I know if you're on the West Side, you might not know the East Side, but we are here to bridge the divide. We want to get the West Siders on the East Side and the East Siders on the West Side. That's what it's about.
It's funny you talk about that. I mean, we say that all the time. I have this joke that I say, like, if you live on the East Side, there's no reason to go to the West Side, and vice versa. There's no reason to go west to east because everything is on both sides. And that's why it's so important to find, as you said, these local places, these restaurants that aren't everywhere, because sometimes you will find something new. And again, the West Side location, I just found out about myself in Fairview Park. I know that's a newer one, but the original is the one in Woodmere on the East Side. So I'm glad they're going to the West Side, letting you guys be able to see what we're enjoying over here too.
That's right. All right. That's awesome, Brandon. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Sure.
There really is just something about going out to breakfast that's just relaxing. And I think it's probably because it's not something that I do during the work week. It's more of a vacation thing or a weekend thing. So I do really associate it with relaxing. But if I'm going out to eat, which I haven't been doing, that's just not something that I'm comfortable doing. I know a lot of people are, but I've been doing the takeout thing. But if I'm going out to eat, I do really love going out to breakfast. So thank you to Brandon for that. Definitely going to check that spot out. All right, let's keep this thing moving. Now it's time for a good follow. And this week, the account that you need to start following is Boss Ladies CLE on Instagram. This is the account that goes with the book Boss Ladies of CLE, and it features female founders, elected officials, there's the tie-in, and Trailblazers from Cleveland. Now, the account on Instagram has quotes from these incredible women and really celebrates the women who are investing in our communities, so you can get to know them a little bit better and also learn what they love about the Cleveland area. And this is also, by the way, a special feature series on 3 News every Wednesday with anchor Sarah Shookman, so you can check that out as well on WKYC. That account again is Boss Ladies CLE on Instagram. And that's it for this week. Make sure you come back next week for a surprise guest. I will not reveal who she is at this time, but I promise you, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you back here next week. And by the way, if you're liking the show, I would really love it if you would share it with your friends, but also subscribe, leave a rating and a review so that we can connect with more people here in Northeast Ohio. I'll see you back here next time. I'm Stephanie Haney.
Thanks for listening to 3 Things to Know with Stephanie Haney from WKYC Studios. Subscribe now to stay in the know.